The first thing that you need to remember when you're working with division is that when you have a problem with a typical division bar in it, then the problem is read the first number divided by the second number. So in this example, this is read 6 divided by 2. And the way we write that is listed here. We put the 6 under the long division symbol and the 2 on the outside. So you're really reversing it around. And you'll need to know this because your problems will be given to you in this format, with the 6 first, then the division bar, and then the 2. And you need to know how to write it with long division. The next thing that's very, very important is keeping everything lined up when you're working with your long division. So for example, in this problem, we're going to start by dividing 3 into 1,242. So I start by dividing 3 into 1. Well, 3 will not go into 1. So I'm going to need to put a 0 over the 1. So I'm keeping that 0 lined up over the 1. And then I'm going to multiply. 3 times 0 is 0. And that's what I subtract from the 1. And that gives me a remainder of 1. Next, I'm going to bring that 2 down and keep everything lined up. So in other words, the 2 is directly underneath the 2 when I bring it down. Now I have 3 divided into 12, which of course is going to go 4 times. And I want to make sure that I put the 4 on top of the 2 to keep everything lined up. So now I'm going to multiply 3 times 4 to get 12. And I subtract that 12 to see what remainder I have, which of course is 0. So next I'm going to bring the 4 straight down to put beside the 0. Notice how I'm keeping everything lined up. So 3 goes into 4 one time. And 3 going into 4 one time. I multiply 3 times 1 to get this 3. And I subtract to get my remainder of 1. Again, I'm going to need to bring down that last number 2 and I bring it straight down, keeping everything lined up. And 3 will go into 12 4 times, and the 4 needs to go on top of this 2, which is what we're working with. That's the last digit we're working with. So we're keeping everything lined up above the last digit. And when I put that in, my problem is complete because when I subtract, I have no remainder. Now let's say you're working in OneNote. You can click on New Page. And you can create grid lines to help you by clicking on View and then choose Rule Lines and choose a grid, whatever size grid you like, to help you keep everything lined up. So if you're dividing 3 into 126, that can help you keep everything lined up. When you're dividing, sometimes you're going to end up with a remainder, but we're not going to write R and then remainder. Instead, we're either going to write our answer as a fraction or a decimal. So let's see how to do that. Let's say I'm dividing 5 into 13. As a decimal, I would divide 5 into 13. 5 goes into 1 0 times. 0 times 5 is 0. And I subtract 1 minus 0 is 1. This isn't perfectly lined up because of my software, but you would line it up perfectly. So my remainder is 1. Then I'm going to bring down that 3. Pretend that's perfectly lined up. 5 goes into 13 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10, so we subtract there. We get a remainder of 3. Now we're going to bring down the 0. Straight down. 5 goes into 36 times. Remember to keep that 6 lined up over the 0. And 5 times 6 is 30, so you have a remainder of 0 at that point. So what I ended up doing here is I added a decimal at the end of my division problem, because this is really the problem 13 divided by 5. So I put a decimal and a 0 to carry out my decimal place as far as I needed to get my answer as a decimal. So here I'd end up with the answer 2 6/10 or 2.6. Now as a fraction, when I work with the fraction, I have the same steps, but I'm going to end up with this remainder of 3. And you can write your remainder over your denominator, so your answer becomes 2 3/5, where 3 is the remainder and 5 is the number you're dividing by. So those are two options, and you need to be able to work with either. So give this problem a try. You're going to divide 13 into 3,245, and a good tip is to estimate how many times 10 will go into 3,000. So use estimation to start figuring out what you would want to multiply 13 times to get into 3,245. Be sure to show all your steps, line everything up. Again, if you'd like, you can go to your View tab, click on Rule Lines, and put in whatever rule lines you would like. You may have to scroll over to see the rule lines because they're not going to go on top of this page. Also note that you're writing your remainder as a fraction. Your answer should be 249 8/13. And you should have showed all your steps. I'm going to go ahead and show you the steps for this one problem in case you had any problems with it. So pause the video if you need to look at these steps. Try this next problem, show all your steps. Again, you can include having the grid over to the side and just scroll to the side by going to View, Rule Lines, and put your grid in. If you already put your grid in, it'll still be there. And check back for the answer. You should end up with 353 4/23. Now let's go ahead and try the next problem. Again, write the remainder as a fraction. After showing your steps, you should end up with 21 2/3 as your answer. Now I'd like you to divide this and write your answer as a decimal. Your answer should be 19.5. In this one, I'd like to show you the steps in case you had any questions. When you get to the end of the problem, since you have a remainder and they want you to work with decimals, you need to add a decimal and then a 0. And you would do that as far out as you needed to, and it will tell you to round. The problem will ask you to round if it's a problem that is going to have a lot of decimal places. But in this problem, you were not asked to round because it only went out one decimal place. Pause and check your answers if needed, or your steps. In this example, you're asked to divide and write your answer as a decimal rounded to the tenths. So if we're rounding to the tenths, we have to take our place value one place further than the place value you want to round. So when we add the zeros to the end of 2,341, we want to round to the tenths, which means we're going to have to take this out to the hundredths. So you're going to have to add a decimal and 2 0 places. So give this one a try. Divide, you end up with 180.07 once you go out to the thousandths place or the hundredths place. So when you round in the tenths place, this was a 0, but there was a 7 after it. So the 180.07 is actually going to round that 0 to a 1. And so your answer rounded to the tenths is 180.1. As a review, I'd like you to complete numbers 1 through 4 under multiplying whole numbers. Please show all your steps. When you're done, you can scroll to the next page, which will show you your answers, and you need to redo any problems that you miss. Next, I'd like you to multiply the following and follow the directions on rounding. So you're going to multiply these out. So for example, number 1, you're going to multiply that out, but then I want you to round the answer to the nearest 10, to your tens place. So I should see your steps where you've multiplied the number out and you get your final answer, and then what I want you to write under here is the rounded answer. And again, you can check on the next page. Now I'd like you to divide these problems. The answers will be on the next page. Please show all your steps. Notice in number 3, I'm using a / as my division symbol. That's 1080 divided by 24. I want you to get used to this notation because on your computer or keyboard you don't have a division symbol. What you have is a / to show division. So try these and the answers are on the next page. Show all your work.